It's the 5th week of 2023, January 29th. So that can only mean one thing. Time to start planting in the garden. I wouldn't normally start planting in January. I'm planting a cool weather loving vegetable, one that really doesn't tolerate the heat well at all. And it's normally a fall crop you'd plant, but I'm gonna try and get it going now. With a little bit of protection, it should be able to make it through any storms that come up throughout February. The vegetable I'm talking about is the rutabaga, also known as a swede or a Swedish turnip. It looks like a turnip, much bigger than a turnip though, and tastes different too. Inside it looks different. It's yellow where turnips are white, but the outside is very similar and it grows much, much larger. My garden I keep mulched with shredded leaves all winter long and let them break down into the soil. So I'm going to be pulling back the leaves and planting directly in the dirt. You don't want to plant in your mulch. And then once the plants actually sprout and start to grow, then I'll move the mulch in back around them. But for now, I'll be moving the mulch out of the way. I've chosen this area of the garden for a particular reason. Primarily, this is where my peppers are going to be planted, and they're not going into the garden until sometime in May, and the rutabagas should be coming out in April. So that means I can get use of this garden space long before anything else will be planted here. Making my ground level. I've got last year's root from a plant decomposing, providing nutrients to the soil. So I'm just gonna cut that down. The roots I'll let continue to compost in the ground. Now I don't plant a lot of rutabagas because I don't eat a whole bunch of them. And again, another vegetable that I'm the only one that eats, but it's gonna be about a 2 foot by 2 foot area. So that means I should get about 16 vegetables in this one spot, 16 rutabagas. I plant them about 4 inches apart, which means about 4 per square foot. I tend to follow a square foot gardening method when I plant my vegetables. Even if I plant them in long rows, I still space them according to the square foot gardening method. To help visualize the spacing, I created this template. It's a 1 foot by 1 foot square, and obviously they're spaced 4 inches apart. I'm sorry, 6 inches apart. You could plant them closer together, 4 inches, but you'll get a smaller rutabaga then. I'm looking for a larger one. So when I lay out the garden, I'll be putting this template down, pushing a hole into the soil, and then I'll be dropping my seeds in here. And then I'll just take it and move it over to here and do the same thing. You want to plant the seeds about a 1/2 inch into the ground. Now I just want to clear back about another foot. So now just move this back to here. And then do the same thing, which is about up to my first knuckle of my finger. Again, try to keep the ground pretty level, and you definitely want to be planting in the ground and not in the mulch. So I'll be growing the American purple top. It's a common, good producing rutabaga. These seeds are about 3 years old, so I'm going to plant 2 or 3 in each hole. And now what we're going to do, just pinch the soil on top and press it down. Pinch and press. Pinch and press. Oop. The soil's already pretty damp. That's one of the things of having the mulch on there. Makes it all very damp. But now what I'm going to do is get a window sash and lay it over the top. So I've placed the sash on top, and then I'm just going to move the leaf litter back in around the edges of the bed to provide it just some protection from cold drafts coming. And we'll keep an eye on them to see how they're doing. This will also warm up the soil a lot and should help with germination. If it gets cold, we can take this off and or open it up and let the plants cool off. And I'll be building a better cover for them very soon. Even though my Baker Creek Rutabagas seeds performed well for me last year in the garden, I also like to start seeds indoors too, just to make certain. So that's all that's necessary to plant the rutabaga. So we'll check back every week and look in on their progress. And now let's get to planting the potatoes. It is too early to plant. It's not too early to get them to start chitting. I want to give them a good head start, and just leaving them to their own devices to start growing sprouts, that's going to take too long. So what I want to do is speed chitting. But before we get into exactly how we're going to be chitting our potatoes, let's discuss what potatoes we are planting. I bought from a new vendor this year, Wood Prairie Family Farm. I saw an interview Lazy Dog Farm had with them, and I was impressed with the owner's knowledge, which I guess is not surprising. I think they've been in this business for 30 years or so. Also, they're the only place I know of that offers the Sarpo Mira variety of potato. This is a European variety. I've seen a lot of British gardeners planting this with great success, and so Wood Prairie Farm had this variety in stock, so I wanted to try it out. It's a nice red potato. It's a very prolific potato, which is what I'm seeking. The other one that I bought from them is Caribe. That's a purple skin. Now, I have never grown a purple potato before, but this is a very fast growing potato. 65 to 80 days, in that range. Others typically take 90 to 120 days to produce. The other varieties we have here are store-bought varieties. Now these have been around since last September. I put them into my homemade root cellar, and I'll show that in a future video. But the purpose was to see if they would actually hold up over time, and they do. They're very hard, and they haven't started to grow. Now there's a few here that have a few, looks like they're getting ready to start producing chits on them. So I don't believe they've had any growth inhibitor put on them. So it looks like we'll be able to get potatoes. These are russet potatoes, generic russet. It doesn't, packaging never said. It was a test to see whether or not they would survive the winter, and they've come through with flying colors. So these are also store-bought potatoes. They were in this bag, also russets. These are in the kitchen. And as you can see, they've already chitted. They've already started. So some of them are more further along than others, but we'll help them get going with that. So let's take a look at the potatoes from Wood Prairie Family Farm. Now, these are certified seed potatoes. Now these obviously are much smaller, but you don't actually need them to be much larger. Now this one, about the size of a hen's egg. Wood Prairie says this is about 2 potatoes. So you would take this and you would cut it in half, and then you have 2 more. So these are all single potatoes, because this is about the size that you want, about 1.5 ounces, I believe it is. So if you get something larger, like 2.5 to 3 ounces, you'd cut that in half. They said about half the size of a hen's egg is what you'd want. This is the 1 pound bag of Caribe, and as you can see, these potatoes are much larger than the Sarpo Miras. These are going to be probably about 2 to 3 potatoes each, so we'll see how they produce as well. But as my favorite late night TV salesman used to say, but wait, there's more. We are going to be planting our red Nordlands, also the Yukon Gold and the White Superior, once Home Depot comes out with them in the stores. And again, I'd like to be able to put some aside and save them for next year's crop, so not having to rely upon suppliers and stores for our seed in the event the supply chain breaks down once more. So now that you've seen what we're going to be growing, let me show you how we're going to grow them. I can't claim ownership of this technique. I first saw it on the Homegrown Veg channel. He's a UK gardener, but once I discovered it, I haven't used any other method, and this has worked with great success. So first thing I'm gonna do is just get myself a 1 gallon container. It's an old flower pot and a plastic bag. And taking the plastic bag and putting it in here. And then I have some pre-moistened peat moss, and I'm just gonna fill up, well, I'm actually just gonna put a layer of this in here. It doesn't have to be packed, nothing. And then we take our seed potatoes, and I'm going to start with the Caribe, and you just lay the potatoes into the peat moss. As I said, this is pre-moistened peat moss. That. And you just cover it up. And now I'm going to put the second layer of potatoes on there and cover these up as well. You could do it just in the pot, but it actually makes it easier to check on the potatoes later on. And I'm going to, so I'll throw this on top. Just going to close this up like that. Put that on top so I know which variety I've gotten here. And then I'm going to move this to my basement and let it sit there for about 2 weeks in my basement. By that point, we should have some chitting going on. Just put this to the side, we'll do the next batch. So take my bag again. Doesn't have to be wet, and actually you don't want it wet. You just want to damp the peat moss. The moisture helps the potatoes begin sprouting. So now we'll take the Sopo Mira and we'll sprinkle them around in there. I'm not too worried if they touch one another. Cover up that layer. I'm going to cover these up as well. Warmth is going to help potatoes begin to sprout. So by putting my basement, I'll be putting them near my furnace. That should give them a good start on growing. And that's all it takes for a quick green sprouting of potatoes. In 2 weeks' time, when we come back, we're gonna have really strong chits in them. They'll probably be much better than what you would have gotten just putting them out and letting them grow in an egg carton or something like that, exposed to the air. Putting them in the ground like that is a terrific way to get your plants started. But again, we'll check back on them and we'll show you the progress. The only thing I would recommend is keeping an eye on the moisture levels in the plastic bags. You don't want them to dry out. Just lightly moist is all that peat moss needs to be. So now let's go check on our garlic, our chives, and our onions and see how they're doing. It's week 12, and as you can see, garlic's still doing well, but the temperatures are supposed to drop dramatically from the 50s, 60s that we've been having to about mid-20s. I'm a little worried about that. Just like that over there, that has been tinged by, looks like frost, and it's died back a little bit on top. So hopefully come springtime, this garlic will still be okay. Here we are, week 3 of the onions. They're coming along real nice, real strong, and very thick. See them moving? I got a small fan blowing on them. That stops any fungi from developing on the top, and it also helps strengthen the plant too. And they're looking really good. Week 2 of the chives. They're coming along. They're growing as well, and still got a few sprouting up here and there. I can see more coming in back there in that far container. So if you'd like to see what we were doing in the garden last week, check out this video right here, and then subscribe and hit that notification bell. And that way you'll be able to keep up to date on the progress of all of our vegetables as we try to grow a supermarket in our own backyard. Okay, thanks for watching.